What's going on, guys? So today I'm going to be doing a review of Resident Evil 5. Most of these videos are pretty random for the moment, but I do have a longer term plan, and since RE4 and 5 are two of my favorite games, I thought these would be kind of just fun, easy videos for me to do at the moment. So the purpose of this video is pretty much more or less the same as the last one, just to discuss some of the pros and cons of Resident Evil 5, overall quality level, good or not, so let's start out with some pros. Let's start out on a positive note, and we'll get into some of the cons of the game later. So first things first, the setting of this game is really awesome. It takes place in Africa, obviously, but I like the fact that, again, kind of the same with 4. It's got a lot of different areas. You know, you kind of start out in like this weird kind of like village area. You go through, you know, kind of this like weird shanty town thing. Then you're doing it by the docks, which feels a lot different. Eventually you're getting into, you know, kind of like an underground lab area. You're getting into like a swamp. You get into, you know, a military base. There's just so many different areas in this game, which are all really fun, you know, some ancient ruins, stuff like that. The game itself, in terms of things like action, difficulty, you know, the way all the stuff functions in the game, it runs really well. I think the game can be very difficult if played properly. So obviously, if you're, you know, the difficulty in general, I think, is really good. The scaling of difficulty. If you're someone who just casually wants to play through the game, no problems, no nothing like that, easy and normal, they're great for you, because you're going to be able to just play through the game, experience it, probably have a good time, and enjoy the action sequences, and that's about it. If you're looking for a challenge, you definitely can go through the game on Pro Mode, where like 90% of attack animations will one-shot you on Pro Mode, which is pretty unfortunate if that's not the kind of challenge you're looking for. But then you have the easier difficulties, of course, to kind of sparse that. But and obviously the difficulty is not as difficult if you blow through it with a rocket launcher, right? If you got an infinite rocket launcher or a Magnum, and this is so easy. Well, of course you one-shot everything. Of course, it's very easy. You play through it properly, however, then you know it's a little more challenging. So the action itself that is in the game is very fun. The fight with Wesker, the fact that you can knock him around with Chris, you got the left, right, the gut punch, the uppercut, you know, all that stuff. The combos with Chevy, you got those really cool kicks that she throws around, which are really great. You know, the whole Wesker thing himself, he just comes across as a badass. The fight with Jill, also very fun. Not as fun on Pro if you're playing it by yourself, but we'll get to that later in the COD section as well. That is another thing about this game. Really fun co-op. I have seen people who hate this game because it's not like the original games. They'll still play it just to play it with a friend. I mean, not by themselves, but they'll play it so they can play through it with a friend, which I think says the quality of the co-op has to be somewhat enjoyable. Otherwise, you know, you'd probably just do something else, which is another thing. It's good mindless fun with a buddy. If you're someone who, you know, just hates these games or this game specifically because it's not, you know, because it's not the original games, you can still have a lot of mindless fun just kind of playing it with a friend. The DLC for this game is another really good pro about this game. The Lost in Nightmares campaign is really great. If you're looking for kind of more of like a puzzle, horror-oriented, it's not the scariest thing in existence, but it's definitely closer to kind of the classic feel of Resident Evil than, you know, you got with the actual game itself. Or if you're looking for more of an action-oriented approach to the game, you can look at the other DLC, which is Desperate Escape, which is basically the action level of Resident Evil hyped up to the 10th degree. The Resident Evil 5 action kind of to the top level. Lots of replay value, and this is something that it did better than its predecessor game, Resident Evil 4, because there's a chapter select option, so you can play your favorite parts of that game over and over and over again, as much as you would like, and say fuck the rest of it. The combat system is very fun. Again, it did it a little bit better than its predecessor did. There's a lot more weapon options, a lot more upgrades. Each gun style kind of has its own individual thing. You have penetration rounds, you have the headshot criticals, you have the high damage weapons, you have kind of the specialty weapons. You got a whole slew of stuff that you can set up. You can set up headshots, arm shots, leg shots, from the back, from the front, neck snaps, one hot shot kills. Like, there's so much variety, so much fun stuff you can kind of set up with the combat in this game, which again just kind of adds to its replay value. It's very fast-paced, which works well for an action game. It is a dedicated action game. Now, this is something else you could really say that is different between Resident Evil 4 and 5. 4 at least attempted to be somewhat of a horror game. 5 did not attempt that at all. This is an action game. If you look at it as an action game and you play it as such, you will probably enjoy it a lot more than if you just looked at it as, oh, this is a horror game. And if you look at this as a horror game, you're going to be disappointed. If you look at it as an action game and you're ready to enjoy some action, you'll probably enjoy this quite a bit more. I already talked about level designs. Unique enemies are also another really fun thing about this. A lot of the enemy designs were kind of taken from 4 and again taken to the nth degree. You have the troll things, you have the things that pop out of their heads, but they're a little more advanced in this game. You have a lot of I do like a lot of the variations for the Plaga stuff, or the Ouroboros in this game. Is very, very fun. A lot of the different mutants, and it's the variety. Variety is the spice of life, and variety is also the spice of everything that exists in this game. Now, the last kind of pro we're going to talk about before we move on to the con section is the Wesker fight. Really amazing. I absolutely love this fight. I love the last fight you do. So the fight with Jill, that one's kind of okay. The fight you do later, though, in the airfield, that one has to be one of my favorite fights in the game. Fuck the RPG, fuck the light switches. Me and Wesker, we're going mano a mano. I don't care. I'm pulling out the Magnum. It's getting infinite ammo. If it's lower difficulty, I'm pulling out the handgun, and we're really going ham. But maybe the knife. But it's so fun because he does have 2 or 3 attack animations you can do where you actually can hit him with a bullet and it will stun him. Then you can get a melee, and you can throw a punch, he'll block it, or you hit him in the face, you knock off his glasses, you set up a 5-point combo. You're hitting him in there, and he's trying to go after you the whole time, and you're trying to move around and shit. It's very, very, very fun fight. I really, really enjoy the Wesker fight. It's definitely one of my favorite things to do in this game. The Wesker and Jill one, also really good. The one on the last level with the lava, take a give her a pass on that, but it's also still pretty alright. So Wesker boss fight, absolutely amazing. I really, really like that a lot. Now, we're gonna go over some cons of this game because it definitely has them. First of all, not a horror game at all. As we said, we get to that in the con section. It is not a horror game at all. Now, the reason I do list this as a con, though I'm perfectly fine with this being an action franchise because I like 4 and 5, but I can see how a fan of the original games would be somewhat disappointed. If you want me to be honest, they have a side series called Revelations. It would have been a lot more beneficial, I think, of the Resident Evil franchise to make a game like this, or Resident Evil 4, or something like this, or maybe even 6 if you like 6, as the side franchise, and maybe make this, keep the main franchise just really horror oriented, and then kind of have a side game that's action. Monopolize on the Call of Duty money, fine, whatever, but do so with some side games as opposed to trying to force that on people who maybe the fans who did not originally want that, which is completely understandable, I think. So that is a definite con of the game. Again, if you choose to look at it as an action game, that's something you can really overlook. But I can see how maybe a hardcore fan would definitely put that definitely would knock this game down several pegs for them, because it's not scary in the slightest. Unrealism pushed a little bit too far in this game. Now, Resident Evil has never been super realistic. If you look at the first game, maybe fan expectations of realism in this game were a little bit too high, but to be fair, it was, it was still a little bit too extreme, because Rebecca, she's like some, if I recall correctly from the first game, she's like some med school student, plus she's, had some type of advanced military training or something, and now she's in like the Special Forces police team or something like that. Like, how does that happen? You're like 19 years old. Like, calm the fuck down. Chris was like a fighter guy, like a fighter pilot guy or something like that, if I recall correctly. Like, that's in his bio or something like that in one of the games, or he's something like that. It's really, again, calm down a little bit, Chris. You're like in your early 20s. It's not like that's a little unrealistic. Like, that's not something that's possible. But the reason I say the unrealism was pushed a little bit too far in this game was primarily the boulder punching you get at the end of the game is one of the big reasons for that, because you have it's somewhat of a meme at this point, but you really have to think about the fact that that's a huge boulder like that. It's unrealistic. It's something that is a small detail, but I still felt it was worth noting that maybe things are a little bit too extreme in this game, and maybe that did put some people off, especially even with the Ouroboros, some of the things that it can do, that it turns into, like Excella. It's just, it pushed realism maybe a little bit too far out of the realm of what is a bioweapon, I guess. The AI on harder difficulties, for me, this is actually the worst thing about this game, is the AI on the harder difficulties. On the easier difficulties, meaning easy, normal, and to some degree veteran, the AI is fine. Is perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with it. It functions, it follows you around. It's semi-helpful. You're good to go. You can play through the game. When you get to professional difficulty, however, it kills you. It gets you killed, and it becomes a liability. If it will go to try to shoot an enemy, and it will instead get hit or shot, and because everything is a one shot, it will die immediately. The bar drains so quickly on pro difficulty. The AI has no recovery time. You can't save it in segments where you have to separate from one another. You really have to be on your game with covering it, or it's just done. If you do choose to play this on a higher difficulty and aren't interested in it becoming immensely frustrated, I would definitely recommend you play this on professional difficulty with a friend, or use weapons that are maybe slight tad overpowered. Not saying you can't do it with just the regular weapons. I'm just saying that's a bit of a pain in the ass. In fact, in some areas, I would say the AI is completely broken. For example, the Jill Wesker fight on pro difficulty. Sheva is supposed to go distract Jill while you take on Wesker. If you try to go that route, Sheva will die many times to Jill, which is very, very unfortunate. Because again, she gets one-shotted and she will inevitably get hit by Jill at least once because of the machine guns. So that's very unfortunate. So kind of broken on harder difficulties, which is definitely an issue with like the mechanics of the game. Like, that is, I'm not sure what you. I'm trying to think of like a technical term, but I'm not a technical person. So, but that's definitely a problem this game has for sure. The other question, and this is kind of a question I have, so if anyone actually makes it this far into the video, because I think it's almost like 15 minutes or something like that, but if anyone was interested enough to make it this far into the video, and you've played both RE4 and RE5, who do you think is worse, Sheva or Ashley? Feel free to respond in the comments. I will probably respond to that comment, because when I've streamed these games before, this is something that eventually comes up when you start discussing comparing and contrasting the two games. Is Sheva versus Ashley. In my opinion, and I know this is not something that everyone necessarily really cares for, but I actually think Sheva's kind of worse. Which is not the popular opinion from what I see from most people, but I actually think Sheva's a little bit worse because Ashley, yes, she is useless, but in the story, she's supposed to be useless. She's the president's daughter. She got kidnapped, and you are supposed to go rescue her. She is the damsel in distress. She is exactly what she's supposed to be, even though that what she is very annoying. She's supposed to be. Sheva is supposed to be helpful, and most of the time just winds up getting you killed or worse. So that's very unfortunate, very shitty. So Sheva is actually broken, whereas Ashley is not broken and is just very annoying. But she's supposed to be annoying. So I would argue that Ashley runs the way she's supposed to, whereas Sheva doesn't. She's just stupid sometimes. So yeah, I actually make the argument that Sheva is worse than Ashley for me personally, but if anyone else feels differently and made it this far into the video, you're free to respond in the comments if you'd like. Last kind of con we're gonna go over here is overpowered weapons. The weapons in this game are super duper overpowered, some of them, and to be fair, I think the reason I'm listing that as a con, I mean, I guess it's not a con, but I still view it as it's somewhat of a con because, you know, it kind of cheapens professional difficulty when you run through it with an IRPG. Like, you know, I feel proud that I go through professional difficulty, that I can go through that with like the basic weapons of the game, but you know, it kind of cheapens it, but everyone else just blows through with a rocket launcher anyway. So I don't know, that's more of a personal con than anything else, but either way, overall, I really enjoy Resident Evil 5. It's very fun multiplayer, great action if you choose to look at it as such. Very fun item leveling system with the guns, lots of replay value. And it even improves on some of the things in the previous installment. Overall, I would say, again, this is a personal opinion. This is not like a oh my god, this is the definitive score of everything ever. I'd give the game an 8. Because the game runs and functions very well, with the exception of the AI on the hardest difficulty. It has a lot of replay value, a lot of options, a lot of leveling systems. It incorporates a lot of different functions from a lot of different styles of games. The levels are very fun. The designs of everything is very fun. And it's a game that I've gotten a lot of enjoyment out of, so I have to factor that in to some degree as well. Whereas I gave 4 more of a 7.5. The reason for this is because I feel like Resident Evil 5 knew what it was trying to be. I don't think a lot of people liked what it was trying to be, but I think it knew it was an action game. Whereas 4 was kind of trying to walk the line between two genres. I personally prefer 4 better. But it was kind of trying to walk the line between two genres, and it worked well, but it wasn't completely satisfying to either genre of game. It wasn't, you know, really as scary, I think, as horror fans wanted it to be, but as an action game, it didn't quite meet up to the quota of you know, a lot of other action type games at the time. So just because it was trying to be a little softer due to the horror aspect. So hopefully people enjoyed the video. If you did and managed to get to the end of the video, let me know in the comments with the Sheva or Ashley thing, or don't, I guess, but either way, I hope I'll see you in the next video.